Well, welcome to lecture number 7 on Mesilat Yesharim. We are about to start chapter 5. That's Perek Hey. This is the last chapter discussing the trait of zihirut, which we could variously translate it as vigilance or watchfulness or carefulness, um, depending on which translation you like better. But so in this one, after describing to us in the last few chapters what it means to be careful, what it means to be vigilant, and how one acquires this trait of zihirut, then as we're going to see, as he's going to go through most of the following traits, when he discusses them, the last one, he's going to tell us what kinds of things you need to watch out for. What are the things that ruin and disturb and block our abilities to acquire these positive traits. So I'll begin as usual from the Hebrew. Try to follow in whichever English you have and see how it matches. Again, if you have any interesting other translations that are in front of you, just feel free to chime in. But hine mafsidei hamidah hazos umarchikei ahim shlosha. The kinds of things that are detrimental or harmful to trying to acquire this trait, and the things that keep us away from it, are three. There are three things. And he's going to mention all three, and then he'll go into detail in each one. The first one is our involvement and the bothers and the preoccupations that we have in this world. We have so much stuff to do. We find this is actually one of the problems with all of the traits that he's going to be talking about. It's just, we're busy. We're busy with stuff, things, life. Hasheni, the second, is haschok v'halatzon. Schok has varying connotations and meanings. It could mean laughter. And latzon is like joking around. But here specifically, the Ramchal is referring to the negative aspects of these things. He's not talking about laughing because of joy and happiness and having a good time with your friends. He's talking about schok, meaning cynicism, making fun of things, making light of things that are important. And latzon, again, he's not just talking about making jokes, but he's talking about making fun, mocking things, right?
My translation is frivolous and levity.
Frivolousness and levity. Okay. So yeah, levity is, lightheadedness, just not taking things seriously. Mine is jesting and mockery, which I think is a little better. But either way, they give the connotation of the negative side of those two things, right? And we'll see as we discuss it in detail. We'll see what he's referring to. Hashlishi, and the third one is achevra hara, is bad company. Hanging out with the wrong people, bad influences. And we'll speak about them one by one. Hine. Let's discuss hatipul v'hatirda, the preoccupations and the troubles and the issues that we all have in our lives that we need to worry about all the time, and how that distracts us from learning this trait of being careful in our lives and watching what we do and how we act and how we behave. We've mentioned them a little bit before, but now he's going to go into it in detail. Because a person is involved and busy with his the various things that are occurring within his life and in his world, his thoughts and his attention is tied, is bound, bezike hamasa asher aleim, with the ropes that are tying the burden, right? That weigh upon them. So it's an interesting image. The image of we have a burden. We all have a burden, right? Our lives, it's a burden. We have a lot of responsibilities and so on. We're carrying this weight. So he looks at the involvement with this weight, and it's an interesting analogy. Our paying so much attention to it is like the ropes that tie that burden to our back, that keep it there, right? And so therefore these people, in other words, most of us, it's impossible for us to pay attention to what we're doing. We're so involved in worrying about keeping the package tied down. It's almost like the image, you're going on a family vacation, say, right? And you have all the kids in the car, and you have everything's all packed up, and you can't fit it in your trunk, so you tie this big thing to your roof. And the whole trip, every 5 minutes, oh no, it's getting loose, and you get out and you tie it. Oh no, and you're not paying attention to just enjoying the trip, right? You're so worried about making sure the package stays on the roof that you're just not paying attention to having a good time with your kids, which was the point of the trip in the first place, right? And when our sages, may their memory be blessed, when they saw this kind of a problem, the preoccupation, they said, you should minimize the amount of involvement you have in your worldly affairs, and spend your time in the Torah, right? In learning and understanding the values that the Torah is trying to teach us. We know we have to be worried about these things, right? If we didn't take care of our jobs, we wouldn't make a living. We wouldn't be able to pay our mortgage or our rent, and we'd be in trouble, right? So we have to be involved in this world. There's no question about that. The issue is doing it too much. That's not necessary. Being so involved in your life, in your work, and in your various burdens and taking care of them, that is not necessary. That it should be so great that it leaves you no time to work on yourself, right? No time to accomplish and achieve becoming a better person. Okay. Therefore, we were commanded to set aside time to study Torah, right? How do we break this? The first thing to do is just break your day and say, this time, whether it's 5 minutes, a half hour, 5 hours, depending on your lives, but set aside a specific time, which that is going to be devoted to not worrying about all these things and studying Torah and trying to learn these midos, these traits that we're trying to teach in this book. We already mentioned that is the most important thing. Putting aside time to work on it is the most important thing in acquiring this trait of vigilance. You'll never get it. It's not going to come to you without putting in the time to work on it. Without setting aside that time, there is no way you will ever achieve it. You'll just be lost in the world of whatever it is that you're involved in. And this is what they meant when they said, a person who is ignorant, right, or can never be a pious person. You can never be good if you don't spend the time to become better. It doesn't come automatically. It comes through taking the time and effort necessary to become that way. And why is this true? Why can't we just be good? Or why can't our job in this world just be to do our job and finish? Like, why do we need more? So he says, the reason is the Creator, may he be blessed. The one who created our inclination to do evil, which is our selfish inclination, our inclination to just do things for our own good, for our own benefit, right? Who is the same Creator, that gave us a path on learning how to become better than that, which is the Torah, the guidance that He gave us, which is like a spice. Well, this is it's Kumosha Amru, and like the famous saying, may the memory be blessed, the famous saying in the Talmud in Kedushin, right? Barasi Yetzer Hara, I created the Yetzer Hara, I created the inclination, the selfish inclination, but Barasi lo Torah Tavlin, but I created the Torah as a spice. This is always a very interesting saying. Even not in the context that the Ramchal is using it here, but the fact that the rabbis referred to the Torah as a spice to the Yetzer Hara, to the so you might think of the evil inclinations as something that's bad, so you should throw it out, right? Get rid of it and only be good, right? And only use your Yetzer Tov. But the Torah is not described that way. It's not, because the Yetzer Hara isn't always necessarily bad or evil. Our inclination to do things and work and be better and all this could be good. The Torah is a spice that takes something that could be sour, right, and could be not tasty, and helps us learn how to use those same strengths, right, and make them good and make them taste good and make them be special. That analogy to Torah as a spice as opposed to an antidote, right, is well, there are places where the rabbis refer to it similar to an antidote, but not here. Here it's specifically saying it's a spice. In other words, it's okay. All of a sudden, then that work you do during the day, you learn how to make that good, right? Right. So if you do the conclusion one makes from the saying that he's choosing to quote here is, yes, you work hard during the day, and if you do take that half hour or hour or whatever it is that you have time to do to spend in learning, then everything becomes better because the Torah is a spice. It makes everything good, right? V'hinei pashadu, it is simple. Shim habore lo barolam akazu el rafu azu. If it's true that the Creator created for this ailment, the ailment of selfishness and self-interest and yetzer hara, the God created also only this a cure, right? Right. The cure is Torah, right? To learn Torah and to learn the wisdom that God gave us. So somebody who thinks he can get away from it without the Torah, he's making a big mistake. And he's going to realize in the end, when he dies, in the same state of selfishness, the same state of only looking after satisfying his own needs and desires, he's going to end up dying with that same sin because he never took the medicine, right? Our evil inclination is a very strong inclination, right? Our inclination to go after our own self-interest. It's, you don't need the Ramchal to tell us. It's very strong. We look around us, we see people that live their lives that way all the time. And without even a person knowing, right? We don't even realize what's happening, right? It takes over our thoughts, our minds. It becomes the motivator for all our behavior. If we don't work on it, that's what's going to motivate our behavior, is our own self-interest, right? No matter what you do, whatever tricks you do in the world, but you don't take the proper refuah, the proper cure, right? Shehi HaTorah, which is the Torah, Kamosha Kasapti, like I wrote. Lo yeda velo yargish, he will never know and he will never realize, he will never feel b'tigboras cholyo, about, he will never even realize how sick he is, right? Ela kishayamos b'cheto, only when one day, when it's all over, he's going to look back and he's going to die with his sin. He will have burned all of his bridges. He will have smashed all of his friendships. He will have lost all of the good that he could have done. V'tovad nishmaso, and his soul will be lost. Holimaz Edoma, what is this comparable to? It's comparable to lechola, a sick person. Shedorash birofim v'hikiru cholyo. He didn't feel well. He went to the doctors, and they said, you have XYZ sickness, whatever it is. They gave him a diagnosis. And they told him, this is the medicine for this diagnosis. For who? And he never bothered spending any time studying medicine. He doesn't know anything about medicine. He says, I'm not going to take the medicine that the doctors prescribed, right? I'm going to take this medicine that I think, because he just imagined some random medicine. Obviously, that sick person will clearly die because from his illness, because he's not taking the right medicine. So when we have this, so then what then is the solution to the living a selfish life, a life ruled and run by our yetzer hara? The solution is the Torah. The solution is to take time out of our lives, to take time out of our days, to spend time to think about what are we supposed to do, how are we supposed to live, how does God want us to live, and the Torah should be our guide. Kain hadavar hazeh, this is the same thing here. Ki ein mi shemakir b'choli hayetzer hara u'v'kocho hamutba bo el boro shebro. No one knows this illness called our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, and the power of it, which is part of our nature. And no one knows it better than the Creator who created us and made us into human beings, right? And He is the same one who warned us. He gave us the way out. He told us the way to cure it, which is the Torah. Who then can just say, I'm going to leave this cure, right? The one who made the disease told us exactly how to cure it, right? Who thinks that you can go ahead and decide on your own that, yeah, what, tell me.
The one who made the disease told us how to cure it. Why make a disease?
Why make a disease in the first place? Yeah, that's a deeper question. Yes, but that is a good question. Well, why not just make us good in the first place? I mean, the simple answer would be, he wants us to earn our reward, but that certainly certainly more than that. But vadai, certainly shechoshech hechomrios, the darkness of physicality, right? Yelech v'yigbar alav madrega achar madrega will become stronger and grow upon us and weigh us down step after step, degree after degree. V'hu yavan, and he won't even realize just how deep he's sinking. Achi motzei shakua bara, until he's completely overcome by evil, v'rachok min ha'emes, and will be very, very far from the truth. Herchek gadol, way too distant. Sha'afilu hirhure dvarim lo yalo alibu levakesh hamas. You won't even think for a moment about searching for the truth. Now, this is interesting because you have to notice that until this last sentence, his focus was very much on behavior, right? Selfish behavior. If we spend time learning the Torah, the idea, the inference is that you would learn how to behave properly. But then suddenly he throws in this little hint here about the search for truth, which is a philosophical concept, not so much a behavior concept, right? And that is that, and he's really zeroing in on the bottom line, and that is that what's going on in our minds, in our hearts, in our souls, and that is that if we allow physicality and our selfishness and desires to dictate all of our behaviors, then we will never ever spend time to learn the truth. We'll never have the humility to sit down and think, what's true, what ideas are true, what concepts are true, because everything we see and it's all shaded, it's all grayed out and influenced by what we want and what we're trying to get out of things, as opposed to what we're actually supposed to be thinking and doing. So he threw in this philosophical a sentence aimed at our ultimate search for truth as the ultimate purpose. So our behavior and our actions and the way we act and the way we live will ultimately affect our ability to learn and know what the truth is. Go ahead. I see you have your hand up online.
Yeah, just a quick question, but I don't want to divert your flow here. What does study of Torah mean? What does that mean? What is the study of Torah?
That's a really good question. I like that question. Thank you for asking that. So let me read the next paragraph, okay, and then I'll answer that question, okay. So the next question is actually the next two paragraphs, okay. Well, it depends how your paragraphs are in your translation there, but however, imhu osek baTorah, if a person does involve himself in Torah, and what does that mean, involving yourself in Torah? Right, bira'oso diracheha, when he sees its ways, right? We know the Torah, he's specifically choosing the Hebrew word diracheha. It should ring in our minds, diracheha darchei noam, the ways of the Torah, the ways of sweetness, of peace. Tzivuyah, and the commands that Torah says, right? The azharosah, and its warnings. The Torah warns us to stay away from things. So in other words, when we see what the Torah tells us to do and understand its ways and its guidance, right? Hine sof, in the end, me'elav, on its own, just by studying and by learning the Torah, you start to see the ways of the Torah, the points of the Torah, the purpose of the Torah, right? And you start what's going to happen is yischadesh bo his orus, then there's going to be an awakening in a person's heart, right? That will bring him to the proper way. So when one sees truth, ideas that are true, ideas that are designed lead us. And this is a very kind of Maimonidean idea here, that when we study the purposes and the reasons behind the mitzvot, what are the Torah commanding us? It's leading us towards certain goals, and it's leading us away from certain things, right? And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, this is the path I'm supposed to be going on. By studying the Torah, we find that path. And then he quotes one of the most remarkable sayings of the rabbis ever, one of the most difficult to understand. And it's also a little relevant to the time. And the 9 days were right before the fast of Tisha B'Av, because it's from the Medrash on Eicha, the book that we're going to read soon in a few days. It says, Halavai osi azu, if only they would have abandoned me, God says, as if. V'torasi shemaru, but had they watched my Torah, my teachings, Shahamaor Sheba, the light that is within the Torah, Machziron Lemutav, would have returned them in the right path. So what God is saying, it's not even about me. It's not about a belief in. This is a very remarkable statement, because in other religions, the idea is you have to believe in this concept, right? There's this concept. You got to believe in this concept. They also agree, of course, that you need to be ethical and you need to understand. But what the Medrash Eicha here is really saying is that, let's say you don't necessarily you don't believe in God, right? But just look at the Torah and see how it leads in the right direction. You'll find your way back to God. You'll get there, right? But first learn, right? And then how do you do it? By seeing the ways of the Torah, understanding what it means, where it's leading you, where it's going, where it's leading you away from, and then you'll find your way. So God, don't worry about me. Forget the idea. You don't like the idea of God. You want to not believe. You want to question God's existence. Okay, just learn. You'll get your way back, right? And that's what that Medrash is really saying. It's a very, very powerful and very, very deeply Jewish idea. That it's okay to ask those questions. It's okay to not even necessarily believe in certain concepts. We're not asking you to believe in them. We're asking you to study. We're asking you to live. We're asking you to learn. That's what we're asking you to do. The concepts, if you don't like them, okay, wait, keep learning. You'll get there, but that's not the requirement. And he's not finished talking about Torah yet. Let me continue. Included in this. What do I mean when I say Torah? Included in studying the Torah, the ways of the Torah, what the Torah means, the whys, the wheres, the whatnots, and so on, is Gamken Kvius Ha'itim, is also spending time. He's saying included in Torah is spending time El Cheshbon HaMaseh V'Tikuno, on thinking about the actions that you do in your life. Think about your life, right? Think about how to fix the things that you do in your life. You can't just think about the Torah as some kind of lofty concept and not relate it to the everyday things that you do. And this is going back around to the way you started. You know how Torah is a tavlin, Torah is a spice. If you take the spice, then what we used to call the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, which was those times that you have to spend in business, those things become good. You can look back, well, the things that I did today, did I treat that person honestly? Did I keep my word? Was I selfish? Was I cheating? Was I fair? Was I giving a good price? Was I, so on. And then you're going to think, how do I fix them? Like I just wrote before. Remember, he's kind of flipping back. He's completing the circle now. Milvad calls it. And not only this, but even more, right? In addition to all of this, Kol Mashi Yishar Lo Panai Me'asakav. Anytime you have extra time from your business, right? From your work, for whatever it is that you do, right, in your life. Im chachamhu, right? If you're a smart person, Vaday Shelo Ya'abdehu, right? Certainly you won't waste that time. You'll learn the preciousness of that time, right? Elayochas bo miyad, he'll seize that moment. V'lo yarpehu, and he won't allow it to slip away, right? La'asok bo be'esek nafsho, in order to be involved in matters of his own soul. So again, this is all included in Torah Tavlin, and Torah being a spice. Thinking about the things that you do in your day and how to fix them. Thinking about how to use your time well. Thinking about Esek Nafsho, matters of your soul, right? How to make yourself better. V'tikun avodaso, and how to fix your work, literally is how to translate avoda, but your worship of God and the work that we do on this world. Does that answer your question a little more about and a little more expansive view of what Torah means, right? V'zeh hamafsid, right? And this mafsid, this thing which takes away. In other words, he's still talking about the first one of the three, right? The first one, which is involvement in worldly matters, right? This one of them, afal pi shehu hayoser kloli, even though it is very inclusive, it's a very broad subject, right? Right? Life is a big subject, right? Of all the things we do, right? It's a big topic, right? Hinehu ayoser kal. It is also the easiest of these three. This is the easiest one to get away from, right? If someone, for someone who wants to get away from these, that he can get away from it. Which I think what he mean. I mean, we're kind of thinking like, what do you mean it's easy? First of all, we have to compare it to the next two to understand why this might be easier than the next two. But also it's easy in the sense, and when we compare it to the next two, both of the next two, the cynicism issue and the bad company issue, have to do with the relating to others, right? This is something that we do by ourselves, right? If you decide on your own, I want to spend time to make my life more meaningful, you can do it most of the time, right? You can spend a few minutes by yourself and try to work on these things. All right. And it's something that we can do, and something that we can, and we're all doing it here, right now. But the other things we're going to see in a moment are much tougher because they have to do with the way we relate to others, and which we'll see in a minute. So I'm going to let him do that. Achasheni, the second one, right, which was which I think the best translation is cynicism. I don't know if I didn't see it. It's not the one that I have. I don't know if anyone else has it. I had jesting and mockery, and you had levity and frivolity, or something like that. I don't know. What do you guys have? Laughter and levity. Again, that's what Safari has too. Yeah. So of all those, I think the English that I have, jesting and mockery, is the best. But I personally would translate it as cynicism and levity, maybe those two, because it's not taking things seriously. And you'll see as we read this whether you agree with me or not. But kimisha toveabam, someone who is sunken into that attitude, who kimisha tovea biyam hagadol. It's like somebody who is drowning in a great sea. Shekasha ma'od lihimalet mimeno. It's extremely difficult if you're in the middle of a vast sea to swim. There's nowhere to swim. It's too vast. You're going to drown. You're done. And it's the same thing if you're stuck in the sea of cynicism, of not taking things seriously, of just making jokes out of things that you shouldn't be joking about, right? Kihine haschok. This kind of laughter, it ruins, it destroys a person's heart. Until the point where reason and knowledge doesn't rule over that person's heart anymore. Just try to think of a situation where someone is standing in front of a crowd that's a hostile crowd. Like, let's say a person is trying to make a point that's important, but the crowd doesn't want to listen. And somebody makes fun of the person that's standing up front. He makes fun of something totally unrelated to the point he or she's trying to make. And everyone laughs, right? You just, and the person's trying to say something that's really, really important, right? And now it's done, right? It's gone. Your whole point is gone. You can't make the point anymore. It's like drowning in a sea of laughter. And if no one's taking it seriously, the guy's trying to tell everyone, I don't know, whatever, like, there's an asteroid coming to hit Earth. We need to do something. The world is burning. We need to do something. And everyone just laughs at you and makes a joke, or they don't take seriously the evidence that you present, right? No matter how real it is. You tell them, the Earth is, I don't know, climate change. Something terrible is going on. We need to do something. But everyone just makes a joke out of it. They say, it's not true. I knew some guy that said a pad, and everyone goes, boo. And that's the end of it, right? And we see this happen all the time. So it's the same thing. If a person wants to be serious about living a life of purpose and a life of Torah, a life of reason, a life, that leads in a good way. And everyone says, there's no way, nobody's ever going to get there. No one's, just forget about it. It's a waste of time. People are this way. Just forget it. It's just go with the flow. And then you get stuck in all of that mass. Vaharehu kashikar oshota, the person becomes like a drunk or someone who's crazy. You can't tell them a trick. You can't tell a person who's drunk, to think straight and say, why don't you do this and it'll be okay. He's drunk. There's nothing you can do. It's done, right? You try to lead them. They don't want to be led. They can't be led. They're living in a world that's not based on reality. It's based on joking around and based on not taking things seriously. And this is what King Solomon said in Kohelet, in the book of Ecclesiastes, where he said, "L'schok amarti miholol." I said, regarding schok, regarding this kind of schok, this kind of laughter, I said miholol. It is crazy, or it is wasteful, or meaningless. So the simcha, and to this kind of happiness, mazuo. So what does it do? In other words, it does something bad. And our wise sages, may their memory be blessed, they said, the laughter and lightheadedness leads people to promiscuity and lewdness. This kind of behavior, that kind of lewdness, right, is everyone knows that it's going in the wrong direction. It's bad. People are afraid to enter that world. But the reason is because you have an image in your mind, because you know that it can lead into very bad places, into and sins that are grave. But when people don't take it seriously and they joke about it, they drag you in, and then you're not serious about it, and then you could end up hurting people and yourself. And it drags you in until you have no fear, you have no shame. Step after step, until you get to the depths of the sin itself, and you end up involved in that. And why all of this? Because the entirety of this trait I'm trying to teach you, being careful, being cautious, right? It depends on one thing. It depends on paying attention. Sima slave is paying attention, right? Ken kol atzmo shel haschok, right? The whole point of the cynicism, the whole point of the joke, right, is einu meser halev, right? It takes your attention away from the seriousness of the matter, right? That's how it works, right? From proper thoughts and iunios, meaning rational thinking. Again, he almost always comes full circle after talking about things that are much more behavior related. He almost always comes back to how you think rationally, how you think towards the truth, right? And again, so that the proper thoughts of awe, thoughts of fear, thoughts of shame don't enter, or thought, not shame, it's not the right word. Yira is awe, is appreciation for the importance and the greatness of the things that we experience and the things that are in the world, most importantly God himself, right? But you can't have those thoughts when you make a joke out of it, when it's, and if that's the kind of crowd that you're in, when nobody's taking it seriously, then it becomes extremely difficult to draw out of it. And if you're the one that's responsible for that kind of joking, then that's really tough to get out of it. Vitira, and think for a minute, and you should see or consider kashi halatzon, the severity of this kind of cynicism, and how much it can corrupt and destroy us. Right? Just like a shield, and this is an interesting analogy here. right? Magain, right? They used to take, when they had a shield to go to battle, you would hold up the shield and you'd use it to block arrows or rocks or whatever projectiles they were sending your way, right? So, and they learned that if you smear it with fat or oil, so then it makes it even better. Those things like slip off the shield better. So just like a shield that is smeared with oil, asher yashmit biyapam le'olav achitzim, so the arrows and the other things that hit it will slip away and fall away from the shield and mashlichim la'aretz and send them to the ground. And it keeps them from getting to the person's body. This is the same thing. What scoffing and lack of seriousness does in front of rebuke and rebelliousness. So in other words, like he's saying, when somebody tries to tell you something and tries to make you better and tries to say, really you should think about this, it's like, making a joke out of it is like you pull up a shield and it just bounces right off. You'll never accept it. You'll never learn it. With one joke, with a schol katan, and one tiny little remark, right? One tiny little a light remark. So a person can just get rid of a whole big mountain, a tremendous amount of enlightenment and awakening. You can just knock it all off with one stupid joke. The whole thing can just fall apart. What a person's heart is awakened by and is amazed by and is stirred by, right? Because of something that it saw, or shamo, or something that it heard. Inyanim, ideas that awaken him to making an account, and search into what you do. And then somebody up there and comes in and says, forget about it, it's all a waste of time, and they make a stupid joke, and then the whole thing just falls away, right? The rabbi gives a stirring sermon, and then somebody gets up and makes a joke about, some stupid rabbi joke, and then the whole thing just falls apart, right? And with the power of this cynicism, everything just falls to the ground, and it doesn't make any impact on the person. It's not because of those things, those stirring and inspiring things that made the person inspired before were very strong. It's not that they were weak, that they go away. They were important. And it wasn't because you didn't understand, right? You did understand, you did absorb it, you got it, right? But because of the tremendous power of the joke, that just destroys everything that's built on musar, on ethics, vayira, and awe of and awe here in this context is more like appreciation for what's important. V'hinei, and behold, Hanavi Yeshaya, the prophet Isaiah, hayatzoveach al zeh kikruchya. This is an interesting phrase. It's kruchya is an Aramaic term that probably means some sort of a crane, and it's funny because I just can't get this image out of my mind. I'm fortunate to live on a lake, and I sit down on a bench and watch the water sometimes at night, and occasionally, and there's this big blue heron that likes to march around the water near where I sit, and if it's walking around and then I come and surprise it, it'll let out this crazy screech of a cackle and start flying away that is so loud, and it's hysterical. It's really funny to see, but the thing will just start shrieking and then just fly away. So when I see this phrase kikruchya, it's like Isaiah was screaming like a crane, but I think of this heron screaming, like just shrieking, just like like this frustrated shriek. When he saw that no matter what he would say, right, the lack of seriousness of the people that he was trying to convey his message to, right, there was no place for all of his rebuke, everything, every lesson he tried to teach, everything he tried to say, it just didn't go anywhere because of this stupid lack of seriousness. People didn't take him seriously. They just made a joke out of it. So no matter, he would give the best speeches. I mean, who gives better speeches than Isaiah? His speeches are still, the centerpiece of almost every major sermon in the past. I mean, there's no one. I mean, you go to the every major build and you go to the UN, the words of Isaiah are plastered. We'll beat our swords into plowshares. A master of words, the likes of which has almost never been in history. But even his speeches get nowhere when people don't take him seriously, because they'll just fall right off, right? And he was so frustrated that he was screaming like a crane, right? Or a heron in my case. And that's what he meant when he said, and now don't be cynical, right? Because if you don't, then you're just going to those binds, the suffering that binds you will just get stronger upon you. You'll never get out of the situation you're in if you just make a joke out of it, if you don't take it seriously. And we're all living lives where people don't take seriously our spiritual growth, our desire to be better. People make it, you can never get better, no one can improve, forget it. Once you're a blank, you'll always be a blank. What all this self-improvement stuff is nonsense. I knew this guy, he was a blank back then, he's still a whatever, but that's cynicism. Of course you'll never be able to get better if that's the way, if that's your attitude. V'inei k'fi chomer hachet v'toldosav hechmir hashofet ha'amiti b'ansho. The punishment that is in store, right, for someone, right, who sins, right, according to this, the severity of the sin is the severity of the punishment. And this is what our rabbis taught us. Kasha haleitzonus, cynicism and not taking things seriously is so severe. Shetchilaso yisurin v'sofo koloya. In the beginning, it starts when you're getting yisurin, when you're getting punished, but then you make a joke out of it, right? You don't take it seriously, you make a joke out of it. In the end, you'll be destroyed by it. Because in the end, who's going to lose the most? The guy who didn't take it seriously, right? Because he's going to, when the tsunami is coming and somebody says we got to go to higher ground, and one guy starts making a joke, whatever, it's all a bunch of joke. Last week they said there's a tsunami. The year before there was never a tsunami. I'm going to stay right here and continue sunbathing. Who's going to drown first, right? It's the idiot who made the stupid joke, right? And that's the same thing with Leitzana. So he says when the less you take it seriously, the more in the end of the story, you're going to be the one that suffers because of it, right? Shenemar, as it says, "V'atal tislotatzu penyachzaku mosrechem," right? Do not. This is the same verse that he quoted before, right? Do not be cynical. Do not be lighthearted about this, because then the binds that bind you are going to get even stronger. Ki cholav v'nechrotza shamati, because I have heard, right, from, in other words, from God. He's a prophet, Isaiah, right? I have heard that the destruction is coming. Me'es Hashem Elokim tzvakos al kol haaretz, on the land. In other words, the destruction is coming. The storm is on its way. So pay attention to the weather report and board up your windows, and listen to the instructions, and don't be an idiot, And if you're the one that tells everybody, whatever, last hurricane I was fine, this hurricane I'll be fine, well, you're going to be the first guy that drowns. So that's number 2. I guess I can stop for a minute discussion, or we can do number 3 and then open the floor. Let's do number 3 because I really want to finish this chapter. So number 1 again is just the busyness of our lives, keeping us away from spending the time we need to spend in order to improve ourselves. Number 2 is cynicism, not taking things seriously, and number 3, that is bad company. All right. Hanging out with people who are fools and sinners. Now, this is obviously the first image that comes to mind is, a bunch of bums sitting on the street, and your parents say, don't hang out with those kids. They're a bunch of troublemakers. You end with that. And of course that's true, right? And that is what he's referring to, right? You hang out with a bunch of gangsters, you're likely to end up in trouble, right? So that just makes sense. That's logical. But I think that this Chevras Hatipshim Achotim is much more than that, and especially today when in social media, for example, we can join groups, right? Or we sometimes we're not even aware that we're in those groups, but of people that are taking us down the path of cynicism, or taking us down the path of not taking things seriously, or taking us down some other evil path, or a whole lot of evil paths, right? And once you become part of that world, you start to see things the way they see it, and you start to, and you end up in this vortex of just thoughts that start off being just not productive, but end up being destructive, So we shouldn't think, oh yeah, okay, I might not hang out on the street corner with those guys, but this is very relevant to all of us, even if we're not hanging out on that street corner. And this is what the Torah says, Viro'eh kesilim yero'eh, right? One who hangs with fools will become a fool. Ki hinei anachnu ro'im pamarabos, we see many times. Even after a person realizes the truth, remember, he understands in his heart and his mind that I'm supposed to pay attention to what I'm doing. I'm supposed to be serious about it, right? I'm supposed to be careful. But nonetheless, he ends up losing it. He ends up becoming soft. He ends up dropping off the path. Or he will. He had certain tremendous lofty goals, but he ends up, leaving. He doesn't fulfill all of them. Because he's afraid that people are going to laugh at him. Or he does it because he wants to be cool, because he wants to mix in with them. He wants them to think he's cool, so he therefore doesn't do what he thinks is right. So many times, there's so many things that we know in our heart is right, but we don't do them because of what people will think about us. And this is what that Solomon warns us: Im shonim al tisarev. In those people who are different, do not mix. What does that mean? It doesn't mean, don't mix with people who are different. What he's explaining, because if a person tells you, right, a person might tell you, right, what do you mean? It says that a person should always be, mureves, but be liked and mixed with people. You should always be well liked by others. That's advice that it says in Chazal, right? So they'll tell you, so do like us, be like us, because we're all doing this together. So you should be like us, right? Afato Emerlo, you need, but by doing that, he's not telling you be like us and let's go, clean up the room, or do something good, or let's sit down and study something together, or let's cook something for a family that needs it, or whatever. They're asking you to get together. Don't be a loser. Don't be a party pooper, and hang with us, because it's important to be with the crowd. To be friendly. So Emerlo, tell him, when is that true? With those people that are doing things that are appropriate for a human being, right? But not if you're acting like a bunch of animals, right? Then it doesn't mean you're supposed to be, and shonim, meaning the people that are different, meaning different than what people are supposed to be doing, right? Those are the kinds of people, right, that Shlomo was telling you not to mix in, right? Being people that aren't doing what human beings are supposed to act as people. We people are different from animals on one major factor, and that is that we're capable of acting morally, doing things that are right because they're right. That's something that an animal can't do. They have all kinds of levels of cognition and understanding and memories. Who knows? I'm not an animal psychologist. But they have brains and they have feelings and all kinds of things. But they don't have a moral concept. They're not going to do something because it's right. A human being can do something because it's right.
So do you think he's advocating for the isolationist theory, sort of the Yesharim, we spit on you if you come here and you're not exactly dressed the way we are? And I don't mean not honestly, but
I think you can interpret it that way. You can say that he's saying, make sure you stick with only a crowd that has the values that you have. I don't think that's what he really means, but he could certainly interpret it that way. But certainly it's true that so because I would say all of us here in this room are people who have decided we want to spend a little bit of time to learn how to be better, right? So these are the kinds of people we should be hanging with, right? So that's how I would interpret it. But you certainly could interpret it that way. Yeah, let's see how he pulls this through, and we'll see which one makes more sense. With David, and Shlomo continues to warn us, Lech minegelish ksil, go opposite of a person who's a fool. But David HaMelech Omer, and King David commanded us, Ashrei ha'isha shelo halach ba'atzas rishonim. This is right at the beginning of the book of Psalms, right? Praise is the person who does not go according to the counsel of the wicked, u'v'derech hatoim, and in the ways of the sinners. Lo amar, he didn't stand, v'moshav leitzim lo yashav, and he didn't sit among those who are scoffers and cynics. And our rabbis explained this and said, he started off halach, a person goes, right? When you go, you're not yet set in it. You're kind of walking with the crowd. You're going along with them, right? But then, I'm sorry, but first you start off walking, but if you walk with them, sofa lamo, at the end, you're going to stand there with them. You're going to be with them. And then in Mamad, and if once you stand there, sofa leishev, then you're really stuck. You're going to sit down, and you're going to be really stuck with that crowd. V'yomer lo yashavti im shav, and he said, I did not sit with those people who are vain, and I won't be with people who are na'alamim, who tear things apart. So nasi kal mereim, I have hated the company of those who are evil, and I will not sit with those who are evil. Right? A person can only and has one responsibility, right? And that is to purify himself, right? That ultimately, and this is a very important observation, which has a lot of very deep meaning, that when the bottom line is, when push comes to shove, because both of these last two things have to do with our relationships with others, we always have to remember that in the end of the story, what does a person really have control over? Only him or herself, right? I can only change myself. So ultimately, I need to make sure that the kind of people I hang with and the kind of places that I go are the ones that are conducive to me being a better person. Because ultimately, that's all that's going to be asked of me, right? That's all a person can do is by myself, I can become a pure person, right? And I can prevent myself from going in the ways that the mob is going, that they're busy with all the nonsense of the time. Everyone is busy running in that direction and running in that direction. You have to stop and think, should I be running along with them just because that's where everyone's going? Or should I be a better person myself, right? And when everyone else is running with whatever nonsense they're running, I'm going to turn around and go and dwell in the courtyards of God, in the places where He resides. That's how David continues and completes that. And he says, Erchatz b'nikayon kapoy, I wash my hands in my innocence. Va'asobo v'asmizbachacha Hashem. In the end, I will go around your altar, and that's where I will spend my time. And if you happen to find yourself in the company of people that are laughing at you and making fun, let's say you're the guy giving the speech and somebody makes a joke, and so lo yashish libo alago, don't pay attention to that. You can laugh at those that are laughing at you, because in the end, who's going to lose? It's them, right? The ones that are not taking this seriously. And think in your heart. Think for a moment, and this is a very interesting thing. Let's say I told you I have a business deal. I know this is going to sound suspicious, but you invest $1,000 tomorrow. This is a new offering. It's and the stock's going to go up. You're going to make $1 million tomorrow, right? But you got to come here now. And let's say, assuming for a moment that it's legit, because most of the times those things aren't. But let's say it is, right? So, and I told, and you knew that you can take a, right? And everyone was standing around the room laughing, ha, 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 don't be such a silly fool. But you know that you can make $1 million tomorrow. Would you care about all those people that are laughing? You wouldn't give a damn, excuse my language, right? You'd take the $1,000 and you'd leave the room and say, you guys can laugh. Go ahead, have fun. I'm making $1 million, right? Right? So you'd go and invest that money, right? Right? If you can win a lot of money or make a lot, he wouldn't right? He wouldn't care about that which his friends expect him to do or not to do, so just so that they don't laugh at him. So here we're talking about your soul. We're talking about your entire life mission, right? Are you going to ruin your entire life mission because you're worried about what people are going to say, right? Because someone's going to laugh at you, right? That's worth a lot more than $1 million, right? And this is what the rabbis meant when they taught us, have a az kanamer, be bold as a leopard. What does that mean? To do what God wants us to do. What does that mean? Bold. You have to be bold, because sometimes, it takes boldness to act against what the crowd is doing. The David said, I will speak in your words near the opposite the kings, and I will not be embarrassed. And this is interesting. One of the most fascinating things about the Torah, and it's obviously lots and lots of fascinating things, is that it's the only ancient book about ancient kings from an ancient civilization that I'm aware of, that tells all about the terrible faults of those kings. I mean, you read about King David's life, King Solomon's life. These are our heroes. And they don't exactly come out, there's beautiful things that they did and tremendous accomplishments and wonderful things and wise things and a lot of lessons, but there's also a lot of stuff in there that doesn't sound that great, right? But if you go and you dig archaeologically, you go to I don't know, Mosul, where they have the Sancher of the Assyrian kings, all their reliefs and the stories of their lives and achievements and accomplishments. The great, mighty, wonder warrior who accomplished and tried this and all the wonderful things he did, and great and mighty. You go to the Egyptian tombs, and everyone was decorated with all these mighty things and great things, and they're the gods of this and the wonders of that, and who knows what, right? But David, all the other ones, but all the other kings in my day, David is saying, they're all involved in their greatness and the wonderful pleasures that they had. I have 700 wives and 900 palaces and 6,000 whatever and 100 million horses. David, I'm also a king, right? He should have been embarrassed, right? All the other kings are running around in David's day boasting about the size of their palaces and their harems, right? And David, what's he talk about, right? He's talking about if he's when he's meeting with all the other kings, they're involved with all their supposed greatness. He's talking about the Musar, the Torah. He's telling you how to live a good life and how to the Torah, Tacha Sipro. Instead of talking about Minhagdulos, Mitanugos, Mineavim Kamam, instead of giving us a speech about how wonderful he is and how great his palace is and how many countries he conquered, right? He's telling them about worshiping God and being a good person. But he didn't care that all the other kings around were like that, but he didn't care. This is I'm not aware, but there may be of other writers in the Jewish pantheon of writers, of which there are many, that made this observation until he said this, until the Ramchal pointed this out about David. Think about David in contrast to all the other kings of the day. And it's fascinating because from an archaeological perspective, right, archaeologists until about 20 years ago didn't believe David existed, right? They always said David is just a myth. Why? Because they've done so many digs, and we find all the contemporaneous kings, they find these palaces and saying, all these, but no, we don't find any evidence that David ever existed. Recently there's 4 places where David is mentioned in ancient inscriptions. So we do know that no serious scholar argues whether he existed or not anymore. But still, we don't have all these grand things.
I read a book that argued that he was kind of more like a Robin Hood type of figure, wasn't a big king. Have you heard that?
Yeah, that's the kind of arguments. But why? So let's leaving those. Yeah, a lot of people make those kind of arguments. But let's leave that aside now. Why? I'm believing that the Torah is giving us the truth about David. He was a great king and a conqueror, and he united the kingdom and everything. So why don't we see anything, right? Well, this is exactly why. Because he wasn't interested in leaving a giant monument to himself. Right? Everyone else was doing these things, right? He wasn't concerned about that, right? His heart wasn't being seduced by this kind of nonsense. Once he achieved and realized the truth, he said what is important to him. He said very clearly, I will speak in your about testimonies about you, God, in front of all the other kings, below Evosh, I will not be embarrassed. I won't be ashamed because my palace isn't as big as your palace, and my harem isn't as big as yours, and my kingdom isn't as big as yours. I'm not going to be embarrassed about that. And Isaiah also said similarly, I have made my face like a flint stone, which is a cheap stone, and I will know that I will not be ashamed because my goals are not to be big and fancy. My goals are to live the right kind of life. So it concludes this chapter. And I think there's so much in here, but let's open the floor for comments and observations.
What were the three again?
So the first one is busyness with our times in our life, right? Mm-hmm. Taking out time from our busy work that we have to do so that we can focus our efforts in the right direction. And the second was avoiding cynicism, mm-hmm. right? And avoiding, taking things seriously when they're serious. And the third is not doing things because everyone else is doing them. It's staying away from not doing things just because the crowd says so. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right and live what's right, because ultimately we're only responsible for ourselves. Those are the three things. The three things that take us away from being careful, which is ultimately zehirut, which is being careful. Mm-hmm. Carefulness, watchfulness, vigilance, whatever translation you like. So that's the end of this midah, this trait. Next week we're going to talk. This was talking about zehirut, being careful. Next time we learn, which will be, I guess, what is that? August the 12th. Okay. Then we're going to be starting the midah of zirizut, of how to do things with alacrity, which is a word no one ever uses, but do things with with enthusiasm. How to bring enthusiasm to your life. How to be be excited about the worship of God and living the right life. That's like the flip side of zirut is zirizut, right? Being careful is kind of more focused on staying away from bad and living the right life. Zirizut is infusing it with a spirit, right? Infusing it with something positive. And that's what the next midah, the next trait he's going to talk about is zirizut, which will probably take us a couple of lectures. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for Deanna for hosting. Thank you, Leslie, for bringing all the food, and for Jeffrey for joining us on Zoom. And we'll see you all next time. All right, I'm going to close this out.
Like I should say, thank you, Saul.